Hello, nonprofit leaders. I'm Sarah Olivieri, your host, and this podcast is here to assist people like you, executive directors, board members, and other nonprofit leaders make a bigger impact with insights, tips, and lessons learned from nonprofit leaders and experts. Having been an executive director, a board member, and now a consultant and coach, I truly understand the challenges you face. And that's why I'm here. I'm all about working smarter, not harder, so you can make a bigger impact without the burnout. And so is our sponsor, DonorBox. DonorBox isn't just a suite of helpful fundraising tools, it's a partner that helps you raise more money and supports you in retaining your donors. I love their forward-thinking approach. Visit donorbox.org to learn more. And don't forget to sign up for the Inspired Nonprofit Leadership newsletter, where you'll get bite-sized, actionable tips just for nonprofit leaders like you, delivered weekly to your inbox. Sign up at inspirednonprofitleadership.com/sign up. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. My guest for this episode is Faust Ruggiero. He is an incredible expert whose career spans a lot, but I'm going to give you the short version and maybe we'll get into more as we go. He's a psychologist who has been in the private practice sector for over 35 years. And before entering private practice, he worked in clinics for deaf children, prisons, nursing homes, substance abuse centers, inpatient facilities, and is a consultant for major and international corporations. He's a published research author and a professional clinical trainer. In the summer of 2016, he began to develop the Fix Yourself Empowerment series based on the Process Life program to help readers address difficult situations in their lives. Welcome. Before we dive into our formal interview, would you just share a little bit about yourself personally to round yourself as a whole person for our audience?
Absolutely, Sarah. And thanks for inviting me. And it's nice to spend time with you and everyone else today. I've been doing this for about 40 years, individual family, marriage counseling, that kind of thing. But back in, I think it was 1987, someone asked me to do some things to help them with their business, and that took off. So I've been doing corporate advising and consulting and some small business things for about a little over 30 years now. So it's the kind of thing where it's challenging, but it's also exciting, and I keep on doing it.
Can you tell me a little bit about how your psychology and counseling background find its way into your business supporting coaching work?
Sure. When I started doing this, someone came and said, hey, we're having some trouble with the staff. We're not communicating. We're not on the same page. The goals just aren't being met. So we started doing some staff communication things, staff enhancement. And then it took off from there. So, on the corporate level, I go in and we put in bigger programs. They have a lot more resources. So you can say, all right, as opposed to a nonprofit where 5 people are running the whole show, these people have, 5 people on a particular item that they're working on. So there's some real differences in the way we do things. On the corporate level, you're working with various levels of management and getting all those folks together. When I go into nonprofits, what I'm really trying to help them do is, first of all, to understand how a nonprofit works, and you'll be surprised how many people don't do that. When I say, do you know all the laws in your state that apply to nonprofits? I get a kind of a general answer. So that's something that we start with. And then I start talking about staff enhancement and staff development. If you're going to put people in and they're going to have, they're going to wear 3 or 4 or 5 hats, you've got to be able to do 2 things. One is to keep them emotionally and intellectually invested. And then the other is to keep training them, because, what works today is no longer available tomorrow. And with AI coming in, things are going to change quickly. So, we talk about staff development and how to keep everyone communicating and evolving.
Yeah, great points in there. I have some follow-up questions. First, because you mentioned You go into nonprofits and you'd be surprised about the things that they don't know. And I have certainly experienced this myself. Nonprofits who weren't holding staff meetings, nonprofits who didn't have any form of project management. I've seen what you've seen, nonprofits who not just didn't know their state laws, but didn't even really know there were state laws and federal laws. So I'd just like to hear, like, what is a quick list of those things that you've seen that you think are important for nonprofit leaders to know, so our listeners can kind of give themselves a little check-in.
There are categories, Sarah. The first is business and how you conduct. You want your business. It's nonprofit, but that's a term. You have to run it like it if you want to make profit. So you're not at the end of the year. What comes off the books and how the accountants do things, that tells you, that keeps you in the nonprofit zone, if you will. But you're running a business, and sometimes nonprofits have a tendency to dumb that down a little bit. Well, we're nonprofit, we don't have to. Yes, you do. It's very serious business. So on the business end, you need to know every law, everything that applies to running a business. You should have a business background. It's great to know, the subject line. If you're offering a service to someone, that's great. And you evolve through the company, and that's great. But you got to know how to run a business. The second part is financial. Again, you still have to pay people and run your business. So you're going to need to know about networking and fundraising and getting grants, grant writing, and how to write them. So financially, you've got to get out there. In terms of your business, you have to network. If you think you're going to run your business with a half a dozen people and that's it, you're in trouble already. I even in my own practice, I have a large network of people, and they run from everything from the clinical to the financial to legal and all. They're all there. If there's a question that comes in, I want to know where I'm going to go to answer it. And if you're dealing with a nonprofit and a small number of people, you want to build a huge network around you. So when it comes up, if it's financial, you have your accountant or your investment people, you have your attorneys, and you have other business people and people who are involved in whatever service you're offering. You need to have all those people, and your network in my mind should be at least 20 large, at least. And when
Yep.
you say, well, who? Go over all the things you do and have an expert for every one of those. That's how you do it. And then go find those people, and they're out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that so many people are like, well, there's always somebody. This is a big world when it comes to people to have relationships with. And now more than ever, I mean, the world is your oyster when it comes to networking. We're no longer constrained by our local communities. Really great tips. I want to shift over to some things you mentioned about staff development, and particularly thinking about, people talk about the importance of succession planning or building kind of their dream team. To me, those are all versions of making the work high quality and consistent so that your nonprofit can survive beyond one person. I'd love to hear a little more about your thoughts about how we make a sustainable team and how we create consistency beyond some superhuman founder.
I always tell people that regardless of what you're building, it is only going to be as strong as your foundation and what you're building it on. So, you're going to want to build a strong team, a team that looks forward to getting together every day. You're going to want to get away from the power struggles and the I want it my way. And as you said, not holding staff meetings. I mean, to have a staff meeting once a week, that's the bare minimum. When I go into nonprofits, I always tell them, when you get in there in the morning, sit down for 15 minutes, review what you did yesterday, set your goals, or at least what has to be done for today. If you're not doing that, people are going to go in different directions. You don't want your people making assumptions about what they should do. And they will do that if they don't have the information. And those assumptions will be the shortest way to get from point A to B. I guarantee it. So you want to be able to get in every day and say, this is what I'm doing. This is what you're doing, and know that that's happening. That's your foundation. If you can build on, now you can start, putting this in and putting that in. But if you're trying to put new programs in and your foundation isn't strong, your program won't run. So, and then the other, when we talk about staff development, keep them educated because things change, and you want to have them creating and feeling good about what they're doing. So that's good. And then it's the personal thing, so and so's going through a divorce. Well, you can say, well, that's your business. Check it at the door. We know that doesn't happen. So you're walking a fine line there where you say, okay, I can't let you let down on your responsibilities. But on the other hand, you're a human being, and we're there for you. So you're going to take care of some of those things. Keep the foundation strong. Then you can build anything on it.
Yeah, really great. I'm thinking about this concept of investing in staff development and wondering if maybe we can right size it for our audience a little. I did this a while ago and then recently with how much you should invest in fundraising or development work. And I like to always go kind of benchmark against the for-profit industry. And I found that basically for-profit corporations tend to spend 25 to 30% of their entire budget is on revenue generation, right? Marketing activities, which is the for-profit term for development activities in the nonprofit space. And if they're wanting to grow, meaning they want to have even more money, they're spending above that 35%. Whereas, nonprofits, I think often are maybe spending like 5 or 10% of their money on getting more money. So if we think about this, and you can bring in some of your experience consulting and working with the corporate world, like what is the nonprofit world investing in staff development? What is the corporate world doing, or the for-profit world? And where do you think the nonprofit world should shift to?
Yeah, and people focus on the amounts a lot. I always focus on how much time you're going to put into this. Nonprofits have the misconception that the people in for the large for-profit industry come in 9 to 5, and that's not the case. Because those people are driven by advancement and promotion, so they're going to put in your 10, 11 hours a day. They're going to take work home. They're going to come in on weekends, do all those kinds of things. So you have to be willing to say, all right, we need fundraising. We may be a small or 6-person business here. However, we don't have enough money, and we want to do these programs, and we want to have staff trainings, and we want to do all those extra things, but we don't have the money. Then you do fundraising. That's your network. Part of your network that I talked about setting up is your fundraising network. You're going to, you always have people. Retired business people are a great source to go to and say, look, we need to grant write. We need to put together fundraising sources, and those people will be happy to do it for you. You need to get it, kind of go beyond your own pride here a little bit, but you're going to ask people. I need a committee that's going to, 5 or 6 of you that are going to say, okay, we set up fundraising programs. I don't care if you're out and you're putting on a golf tournament. That may bring in $500. You didn't have that before. It's a fun day. You raise money, but the other thing it does is it gets your name out. You are now community active. You are a person, it's the old story. The more I see you, the more invested in you I'll become. So use volunteer programs. If you are a nonprofit, network and make one of your network entities your fundraising people. Go get the money you need. And the way you do it is to say, okay, we want to buy this computer program and have this training and have our staff run it. It's going to cost us $3,000. Okay, we need to raise $3,000. Now you go to your committee and you say, here's what we need. We need $3,000 to do this. And let them go to work. Network and put together the committees and the programs you need to augment your business. You can simulate being a big business when you're a very small business by networking and putting these factions in place.
Yeah, I think you've said some really key things for people. And just to back up everything you said with some examples, I'm often encouraging nonprofits to build that network of major donors. And that was originally inspired by a nonprofit executive director I knew when I was doing marketing work. And when he needed $30,000, $80,000, his network was so good, it was 1 or 2 phone calls away. He knew who to call to get big sums of money or big sums of money fast. And the answer was usually, sure, or I can get you half that. I need 2 days to transfer from one account to another, right? It wasn't this like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Because he built those relationships. And another example, because I mean, so often nonprofits are thinking nobody's going to give us that money. Like, I need $3,000. And that feels like a lot when you don't have it. But I knew an entrepreneur who was starting a nonprofit, and he tells me this story that he and 2 of his entrepreneur friends wanted to test an idea for starting a nonprofit. So they each put a little bit of money in a bucket to try something. How much was a little bit of money? For them, it each was $75,000. So that, I like to tell that story to get people thinking there are plenty of people out here for whom they will experiment with $75,000. And all of a sudden, your $3,000 need doesn't feel so impossible.
Sarah, when I go into businesses, we throw information like we're giving you today, and they see these things all over the place, and then they say, "But how?" So here's what the advice I give people: kind of put things on halt for a moment and say that a business item. What we will do is we're going to build this committee. This is now become part of our nonprofit program. So one of the things we're going to do, we're going to devote time to just identifying a handful of people. They will be people in your community, people who have been in business, people who are wealthy people. You're going to go put the word out. We need people of this caliber to come and help us. If you're not sure how to do that, get one person who knows how to do it, and they're out there. Say, okay, I just need someone who help us set up our external committee, our volunteer committee that's going to be our fundraising committee. You would be surprised how many people are willing to come aboard, particularly if it's a service organization. If you're out there with your volunteer a group to take care of the homeless in your area, they will come out from everywhere. So go identify one person, but you've got to make it a priority. This isn't some ancillary item that you're going to do. This is a major item, because in the end, it could make or break you. It can keep you afloat or put you in a position to file bankruptcy or dissolve your company. So you really need to put this into place.
Yeah, 100%. I can't tell you. Well, I can tell you it's not that many times, but enough times I've heard nonprofit folks say, well, I can't invest time and money in fundraising because I have to keep the lights on. I have to keep my program running. I say, no, you don't. If you are faced with running out of money and closing, you don't need to be running your programs right now. And you certainly don't need to keep the lights on. You need to be fundraising so that your programs can live many days into the future.
Yeah, they often have it backward. It's intimidating, and people what they don't realize is they're dealing with their own internal resistance, and that's always going to impede what you do. You hear what we're saying. You should be, if any of you are hearing this, you should be saying, yes, I'm going to go out and I'm going to identify that one person or those 2 people that are going to help me set this up. When I go in, I say, I'm not asking you to fundraise. I'm asking you to put a component into your business structure that will take care of fundraising. I understand you're the executive director, or you have these responsibilities, and there just isn't enough time to got that. So then identify the people who are going to do that. Make that a priority. If you don't do this, you will struggle with finances. And you know what happens when small business people struggle with finances? They fight. They get angry at each other. They come in and they're just beat up for everything. And then, then they put things off, and then things pile up and things don't get done. So you're going to go that route anyway. So why not just set one priority? Get your staff together and say, okay, we have a business item here. I want everyone to go out and look for one person. You know, go to the colleges who have their alumni associations. Go into businesses who, are willing to give a little bit. Put ads in the paper if you must. Do little spots on Facebook. Need people for these services. I guarantee you they'll be there. You're not spending 40 hours a week doing it. You'll probably spend an hour a day. It'll happen.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of really important points here. One is, what you're describing with networking and networking for fundraising, you can get people to be on a committee. You can take one relationship and have that relationship bring you 2, 3, 4 more relationships in each one of those, which says to me that networking is a scalable activity, right? It comes with this exponential component. The more people you have in your network, the easier it is to get even more people in your network, because we introduce each other and we align with each other. And that's really, really key, because sometimes I think, especially when people are just starting out, they feel like it is so hard. And it is labor intensive to get the first person.
Right.
But everything's easier after that.
It's interesting. I counseled in a prison in the early going for about 5 years, and we had a volunteer coordinator, part of our treatment staff. That's all she did. And she came in, and it was her job to go out and get volunteers. We had volunteers for education. We had them for counseling. We had them to do people in the community when inmates would get to the point that they're ready to go to work release and jobs. We had probably we had the most progressive treatment staff in the state, because we did these kinds of things. So again, the topic, the title, a volunteer coordinator, get that person, have that person volunteer. Keep this in mind about business people. They retire from business, but the business never comes out of them. They're always looking for something. And if they can say, you know what, gee, I can give you 3 or 4 hours a week and I'm not sitting in front of a television set, I'm there. I can take this thing that was small and create it. Pumps my ego up. I feel good about myself. I'm doing something that's public service. I'm giving back. They love that. Go get them.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll just put it out there, everybody, using some modern tech, which is not that hard, like LinkedIn, you can literally look for people who are retired. It is a button that you can check. It's a filter you can put in there and find retired people. I've often consulted with nonprofits looking to increase their board. And I say, that's another button in LinkedIn where you can say open to volunteering on boards. And that is a plethora of great people, and especially retired executive directors, nonprofit CEOs make great board members because they have the skills and but they never want to take over your job, right? They're retired. They don't want to do it full time, right. But they can be a great mentor, coach, and they come with big networks from a lifetime of doing exactly what you've just said.
And that's the other part of it. When you start networking, you got to keep in mind, you're not bringing on an individual. You're bringing on that person and their network. Well, I know this one. Oh, you need that? Well, hold on. I've got this person that we used and he's or she's retired. They'll be glad to come and help you do some things. Again, what you're doing is taking your small nonprofit and have it simulate a larger business by expanding the people who work with you, but they're not on your payroll and they're going to take over and do some things. You'd be surprised what you can do.
I want to also go to something you said about, it's a matter of deciding and then working through like your inner story. I have one client who calls it her but Sarah's, right? We get on a coaching call and she's like, but Sarah, it's like her own objections in her head. Can you talk a little bit about how you help individuals or teams make decisions and get through those that internal
Your
resistance?
first order of business, and it's what I do when I go in, and I'll sit down with the executive director, and I will assess, and I will say, I'm really looking to see whether or not you are a person who goes and gets it, or gives me a reason why it can't happen. If you're telling me these are some of the difficult spots, and you're saying, but let's go get them, I'm good. But it comes from the top. If you're going to say, I don't know. We don't have time for this. And every time we bring something up, you've got something that you think is going to impede it. Your program's never going to run. So it starts right there. Who are you? You're going to be the person that runs this. So I start with that, and then building a staff around that. Your energy is either going to be positive, and people are going to come in, that's going to be infectious, or you're, and you'll know that because your staff, you can look at your staff and say, are they coming in and they're ready to go, or are they not? Because they're going to mirror what you do. It's where I start every time I go into a company. It's their executive or that executive committee or whatever it may be. Let's start there, because you've got to embrace this. If you're doing this halfway, then you get halfway, and halfway eventually becomes no way. If you're going in and saying, okay, we are going to make this happen, we are going to set up a network, we are going to become more profitable. At the end of the year, they may write the profits off to wherever, so we maintain our status, but we are going to have everything we need to, whether it's office supplies or it is the programs we're running and staff enhancement. We're going to have it all, and we are going to get this done, and nothing's going to stop us. You're going to make it.
I love it. So as you think about those folks who are like, yeah, I'm going to make this happen, but I don't know where to start, or it feels overwhelming because there is so much to do, what do you offer them?
When I go in, I'm right. I said, okay, let's go. We're going to assess your business. We're going to assess what you have. And that's everything. That's the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever. We're going to assess it. So, because we need to have a starting point, and that starting point needs to be realistic and set a foundation to move forward. So I'm not interested in your emotions about what this is. I'm interested in factual information. That's going to tell us where we start. That's the first thing you're going to want to do, is have someone to come in and be able just to assess your program.
Yeah, that's so important. I think as a key leadership skill to have or to develop is to have that emotional intelligence, emotional awareness, and be able to separate out from your feelings of fear and what does the data actually say. And so often those things are different. And if we can try to make decisions on the data rather than the emotion, which is not to say sometimes there is a place to make an emotional decision. I think when everybody is feeling excitement, right? Then there's an opportunity that comes with excitement as an emotion. But so often it's the negative emotions, it's the fear that hold us back. And again and again, I see when we look at the data, there are a lot of false assumptions in that fear. Do you see that?
I always see that. And, when I'm dealing with the directors, I'm always saying, we're putting together a program for you. Can you let us help? Or are you going to consistently try to put your mark on this thing? You've got to be able to let go a little bit. You are at the top, so to speak, but you are part of the team. You've got to be able to lose some of that control. And if you think that doesn't make sense, and I say, tell me where you are in the business. You're the one running it. Is it making it? Are you in a position to say, yeah, we have what we need? If you're not, and you're the person running it, then you need some help, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You are still in your position. You are wise enough to say, we need these components introduced into the plan, and when we do that, we're going to be better. Don't run this. It's like any other problem. We have the problem, and we don't want anyone to know about it, so we keep it to ourselves and we try to overcome it. You're dead as soon as you start. As soon as that process starts, you're done. Okay, open it up. Okay, I don't know how to do this. We can do this better. We need this information. We need these people or this committee. Go get them. You don't need, in the end, you're going to get all the glory because you made all these great decisions. So
That's right.
it's just not immediate. You're going to get it down the road and people are going to say, oh, look at that small business. That nonprofit is really doing things the right way. They're going to look at you.
So important. I just want to say what you said again, like that's okay, right? All great leaders. There is no great leader that is capable of everything or knows everything. And all the great ones get help. Lots and lots of help. And they love getting help. And they love building great teams to help make it happen. It's so, so important. Any last words, final words of advice you'd like to share with our audience? And also, what kind of folks should be reaching out to you and what's the best way to do that?
Okay. For all of you who are in small businesses, my first order of business, as I said, is be willing to get that foundation in line. Get one person. Go on LinkedIn, go on whatever you're going to do, but get that one person. The person you are searching for, so we identify that, is a volunteer coordinator or a volunteer business coordinator, which is just fine. And then when you list that, you're going to say, need help in these areas. That will tell that so you might get one that can do most of them, or you might get one who can say, well, I can do one, but that person's wise enough to say, I won't do those, but I know people who will. Start by identifying that one person. That's the first thing. The second thing is we just touched on, don't try to do this yourself anymore. If anything you should understand about small nonprofits is you don't have enough resources and you don't have enough money to make them run the way you'd like to. Expand the staff, but be willing to do this. If we're done with this interview and you say, I don't know, you're telling yourself about you already. If you're saying, you know what, I like that makes sense, and we haven't done anything like that, maybe you want to take the next step. You got to know about you. You got to know who you are in business. And if you're not willing to do all these things, that's telling you you're restricting the business design. That's telling you about yourself. So, be willing to get out there and push it forward. It'll happen. It takes a little time, but build your foundation. As far as getting to me, I have a website. It's my name, www.faustruggiero.com. You can contact me if you have any questions about anything. I do get back to people. I'll be glad to help.
Excellent. Well, Faust, thank you so much. And thank you out there for tuning in and for everything that you do to make our communities better. And every time you say yes to making it happen, even if you don't know how, and especially if you don't know how. Before you go, I have a quick favor to ask from you, which is please take a moment to like and review this podcast wherever you're listening to it, and or refer it to a friend or colleague who you think could benefit from these conversations. And I'll add, since we've been talking about the power of networking, sharing a resource with someone who you'd like to be better connected with is a great step in fostering and building that relationship. Until next time, remember that nonprofits are actually more complex than for-profit businesses. And so you've got to approach them as working smarter, not necessarily harder, and building those resources that you need. I know it's possible, and I'm sure you can do it if you just say that you can. Until next time, take care of yourself and all the best.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.